Welcome back to the Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise News Channel. I'm Reuben, Abati. Before we went on break, we were already discussing the situation in the southeastern part of Nigeria, where there seems to be a deteriorating security situation, with the military conducting an Operation Python Dance 2, as they have titled it, and going ahead to declare the Indigenous People Organization of Biafra a terrorist organization. There have been many developments, and we're already touching on some of these before we went on break, but there have been issues about the classification of IPOB as a terrorist organization, the reported assault on the home of Nnamdi Kanu, whom we understand is nowhere to be found now. Even his parents have gone into hiding, perhaps, you know, as it were. And the military, sometimes they'll say, we'll pull out, and then, you know, there will be other reports about not pulling out. But the situation in that part of the country appears really frightening, and quite a number of people are anxious.
Right. I think the most significant development in the week is not the...
resignation.
No, it's not the military activities around the palace of Mr. Kanu's house. I do think that the pronouncement by the 5 governors of the Southeast is the most significant development. They've disowned IPOB. They've declared, you know, the organization. Where some people said they proscribed them as if they registered them in the first place. I don't think they registered them.
But the response from IPOB, the response from MASOB, the young people in the East, they seem to be thoroughly disappointed.
About what?
What the governors have done and what they have said.
Wait. The governors have legitimate electoral mandate as representatives, as leaders of the people. They hold the power to govern the southeastern states.
Guaranteed peace.
The people who are quiet, and I think they should also speak up for us to know where they stand, are the parliamentarians elected in the National Assembly, both House of Rep and Senate. The parliamentarians for those 5 states shouldn't be quiet at this time. So they need to tell us, is this reflecting, you know, the popular will of the people from the Southeast, or is it not? But the most concrete thing that we have on the table is that the governor has said, I've disowned them. Now, the military says that they are
terrorists,
you know, and then they have staged an army of occupation, you know, around, you know, the 5 states, and particularly at Umahia.
Do you see the crisis escalating? Particularly now that IPOB says it's not a terrorist organization. The issue is self-determination.
Crisis escalating.
And that they have the right to ask for self-determination.
Well, crisis escalating. You have to see the face of the two sides. Some people have gone underground, you know. It's only the tanks that you see now. You know, the supposed leader.
You don't seem to be as anxious, but...
No, I'm anxious. I just... shake my head that all over again you're seeing us doing things rather sluggishly. These are not the best ways to deal with serious matters, because it's a very serious issue that we're dealing with. If they really mean that they want to dismember the country, that is serious. And if they make a move to dismember the country, it is not something you treat with...
kiss glove.
It's not kiss glove. Kiss glove is... also that, again, is not the best way to handle it. I think that both IPOB and the government are handling the entire issue wrongly. People seem to have different ideas on, oh, this is a purely human rights issue. It's only partially human rights related. And government, too, that think that it's a purely security issue, is also partially only a security issue. I think that government ought to have thought deeply. I started before the break saying that when you put Kanu on trial for treason, we assume that it means that if he's convicted, you will kill him, because the sentence, the ultimate sentence for treason is death.
Yes.
Are you ready to do that? If you're not ready to do that, you don't go that way. you find some other ways. The former president Obasanjo said, I would have talked to Kanu. And you can imagine Obasanjo calling Kanu, first of all, thoroughly abusing him. And then telling him, tell me what you want, after lecturing him. I think that leaders must have the patience to have people disagree with them. And when you show that patience, you also shouldn't see every problem as a problem to be solved by military might. That way, it is easier to deal with. What the governors have done is the governors simply have were left with no choice. You either back IPOB or you back the federal government. So the governors...
It's convenient to the federal government.
Immediately.
So, however, I mean, some people have also said, look, the eastern part of the country is being militarized, and this poses real dangers to our democracy. Now, ordinarily, what the military is doing is perhaps the job of the police, and we seem to be using the police, less and less for jobs that should be done by the police. And we've seen this before under the military. Is it not ironic that under a civilian dispensation,
you have to be careful.
You have the military doing police work?
You have to be careful about the borderline between the brief of the police and that of the military. There are reports that petrol bomb and some arms are involved.
Molotov cocktails, they say, and stones.
Well,
machetes.
So the security forces need to maintain, the responsibility to maintain national security can't be compromised.
Sacrosanct,
yeah. It's not a question of police.
So this is about sovereignty. Yeah. It's not about threat to life and property.
That's what you're saying. Safety.
Then you have a group that has already set up its own army and challenging the federal government. You don't expect that kind of a group to be treated differently, honestly.
It's not a policing
at all. The Biafra Secret Service, the Biafra National Guard.
I think that still does not all of that, because he is making a very fundamental point. The only reason you see people talking of state police is not because they want state police for the fun of it. It's because they believe that a police there can deal with issues locally that a federal police cannot deal with.
Locally.
So it seems to me like we have to take a formal decision on whether we want to keep a national police as is, or to make every state have a state police. Because in a democratic setting, the police, and we have an anti-riot squad in the police, they can do virtually everything the military can do. They have quite a significant equipment also.
Still not the same side.
No, but you don't take soldiers where you are not fighting. Before they moved to the southeast, there was no fighting going on there. The police, when are we going to have a police that can handle crisis? Because we're going to have elections. And soon, you'll find that the people who will be keeping the peace will be soldiers. I think that's the point Dr. Abati was making. It's not that it is wrong to send soldiers when there is need for soldiers. If people are destroying property and you find that they're overpowering the police, you have to send the military. It's done everywhere. And we have to support that at all times. But do we need to have our police upgraded? Absolutely. Do we need to train them? Do we need to have them to become part of the institutions that keep this federation? Because that's what it was intended to be. Right now, it's like they're bystanders. And I'm not sure whether you find that the police is working on one side and watching the military operating on another.
So there are other dimensions.
That has been the trend since 1999. It's always been the army been deployed in. Yeah.
There are other dimensions that I think we may also deal with, because the issues about human rights violation. The soldiers that were posted to the southeast have been accused of violating the rights of persons. There have been footages shown indicating that people were maltreated, and that the soldiers were acting even beyond the rules of engagement, what we imagine to be the rules of engagement. And some people have also said, look, this is a clear demonstration of the marginalization of the Igbo in Nigeria. And this is why I say, it's something we should be anxious about.
Not seen anywhere
because it goes beyond a routine military operation.
I've not seen anywhere where the military was deployed and there were no cases of abuse.
And that's the point. Well, this is the point that I think he was referring to earlier on, or you tangentially sort of. The moment you send soldiers, you are bound to get certain kinds of treatment.
Absolutely.
That's why they said, don't send soldiers, send a civil force like the police. When they can't handle it, then you call out the army.
We are ignoring.
No, but because human rights abuses are bound to occur where you have. No, let me finish.
Establish that there is no absolute freedom anywhere.
No, let me finish. Hang on. Human rights abuses must occur where you have issues such as this. I think that what we have had to deal with really is more propaganda on both sides, particularly with regards to the IPOB people. So, the rest of society is always on the side of the little man. Mm-hmm. The victim in this case is seen as IPOB. Yeah. So if they bring out one issue of human rights abuse, it becomes a big issue. And in the current world, it becomes a big issue. But I think the major issue we have to keep drumming into the minds of our government is that we have to ensure that we don't use the military for every crisis, that we can use the police for.
I think the Nigerian military has, they have operations in about 28 states out of 36.
Two issues that we need to be careful about. Question, the IPOB guys truly armed? Before you begin to talk about human rights issues. So if you have armed insurgents, the military should go all out to quell the insurgency. So if the guys are arrested...
IPOB has said that it is a non-violent organization.
But are they
interested in self-determination?
There are reports that they've killed people in Port Harcourt, attacked the office of a police commissioner and stuff. So let's be factual.
But the soldiers also attacked the offices of the Nigerian Union of Journalists. Were the journalists also carrying arms? Were they carrying arms?
The action of the military had been provoked. Then the other thing about marginalization, who is alleging marginalization? You have 5 governors elected, given the power to govern the states. They are not alleging marginalization. They are now pronouncing that IPOB is not a legal entity. So who is being marginalized?
It's convenient for the governor.
It's not about convenience. They are the elected. If anybody wants to report to the UN,
already they are on the other side. They are elected, but they are on the other side.
Which other side? There's no other side. You cannot be condoning illegality.
I agree with you.
I agree. Now, I see we are excited about this subject.
But one moment, there was never a report that I read anywhere that IPOB was killing people before the military got there.
Anyway, we'll take a break. We'll take a break again, and then we'll be back. You're still watching the Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise News channel with me, Reuben Abati, in Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos. Do stay with us. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to the Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise News channel. I'm Reuben Abati, and we have our panelists who have been looking at the situation in Nigeria. Now, we've been talking about terrorism, and I see that we're really concerned about the situation in the Southeast. But there are some people, some Nigerians who have said, look, yes, you may designate Boko Haram a terrorist organization, and there have been some developments in that regard, but I see that we're not really agreed on whether IPOB is a terrorist organization or not. But recently, some of the Chibok girls were rescued, and about 100 of them or more were taken to a rehabilitation center. The good news is that they've been rejoined with their families, and I think that government, has taken a good step in that direction. But at the moment, I don't know whether any one of you can answer the question, where is Nnamdi Kanu? I doubt if you can answer the question. But talking about terror, in London, a few days ago, Friday evening, there was an incident at a train station, an explosive device, resulting in the death of about 30 persons. 2 persons have so far been arrested. It's as if the entire world is under siege, terror here, terror there, demonstration there. Is the world really safe? Is this planet really sustainable in the long run?
In one word, yes. But take terror as an issue. It is going to get worse before it gets better. And this is not being alarmist. It is just reading the trends. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And that means it's not going to happen anytime soon. The nature of terror is such that 99% of the time they are stopped. But just once they succeed, and that becomes a huge issue. It becomes
five attacks so far in London this year.
And they have done it. Much of it is taking up machetes and or daggers and striking at people in public. In that sort of civilized society, that is strange, and that is shocking. But terror is everywhere, and terror is still at home. Let me tell you that in the last 3 months, the United Nations have calculated that Boko Haram had attacked no less than 120 times in the last 3 months. We don't read it. No less than 120 times in 3 months.
That's a lot.
Now, that is here at home.
So the news about the girls being rehabilitated?
It's desirable because we also need some good news. We're getting too much bad news from that end. And the good news is that these girls who were kidnapped, abducted from their schools, were now brought back by whatever means, and they're now reuniting with their parents. I mean, if you are one of their parents, you can't wait for that reunion. The agony, of course, remains that of parents whose daughters have not come back. So we say, while it is good news that they're reuniting with their parents, please do continue efforts to get those girls back so that the rest can also be reunited with their parents.
I do not think, I'm not a pessimist, but I do not think the fight against terror ultimately is winnable. We can contain it. I don't think they've gone nuclear in their approach. So I think ultimately we may just have to be managing the situation. That's the way I see it, honestly.
Wale, and you might even be, well, okay, this is an area that I have of late done quite some work. You cannot win that battle by military means alone, neither in Nigeria, nor anywhere.
But are there lessons we can learn from how the various attacks in London in the last few months have been handled? President Trump, in the tweet that he sent out immediately after this last incident, was even advising the British to be more proactive. And some people felt uncomfortable with that. This is a moment of tragedy, of national concern, with severe attack on the integrity of public spaces.
It's just the same thing we're saying. For me, even if I had to place the two countries together, I think the British are more on the spot in terms of intelligence than the US. That is the way I see them. But like we said, when it comes to terror, it's not the regular war that you fight. You can't even see it coming. And trying to take a swipe at the British government over this is nothing that should have come from a neighboring country like the United States. But by and large, there's a lot we can learn as a people, and we need to actually improve our intelligence gathering. That is one area that we are actually lagging behind here in the country. I can't see us doing a lot in terms of intelligence. We need to improve on that seriously.
We improve our intelligence gathering, but we need more Nigerians. Lessons for us now to be involved in that intelligence gathering. People, you will be surprised how much information would have been channeled to the authorities in the UK within this couple of days. Absolutely. In Nigeria, you barely get that sort of response.
Cooperation.
And people must see that they are also threatened, not necessarily only the primary victims, but that everybody is a potential victim, which means that the security of the country is something that all of us should be involved in. Which is why when we're talking about handling of security, it's not as if we're talking about what only a core of professionals should deal with. It's our own issue also. And so we all should be involved. If you have information that could help fight terror, by all means, say something about it to the right authorities. Of course, the right authorities. Because in Nigeria, if you go and report certain people, you might also become... So, but we have to be involved in helping the authorities to keep us more secure. We tend to be distant, and then we blame everybody and we criticize and we condemn what the government is doing, but we're never really involved in it.
I think it's because not just the police, but the security agencies generally are not anybody's friends. So people avoid them.
Yeah. Earlier on, I said, you said it, Wale, you said that the world is not safe.
Yeah.
And you don't even believe that the war against terror could ever be won. Sometimes when I read some of these reports, I'm a bit nervous about even the threat of a World War III. Look at what is happening in North Korea. The North Korean president, whom President Trump calls the rocket man, he just fired another missile, over Japan. And today, President Trump has spoken to the South Korean president, and they're talking about mounting more pressures on North Korea, imposing sanctions and taking more steps to checkmate North Korea. Now, this whole thing going on in that Korean peninsula, it looks like the world itself is under threat.
Well,
and the ultimate terror will probably be a nuclear war.
Well, I would like to chip in that I have a different view.
Okay.
That the war against terror is increasingly being won, and that it will ultimately be won. There are so many wars that humanity has to contend with. You have to fight against
the war against poverty,
against diseases
and hunger
that break out intermittently. Eventually, the human race gain the upper hand. Natural disasters, whether you're talking of hurricanes or tsunamis, probably claim more casualties than terror. Okay, there will be no end to it, but humanity will triumph over them. So the same with terror. I do think that humanity is gaining an upper hand over terror. And terror is more at risk of being extinguished than the world being at risk. Regardless of whether that's in Nigeria.
I appreciate
the
optimism is in order.
But for me, it's not going to change,
See.
honestly.
The only thing that can last is equilibrium. Any condition of disequilibrium can't be sustained. Forces will gravitate, whether politically,
the nature
socially,
of international politics,
economically. Forces will gravitate. One thing that wars will end. However long they last, wars will eventually. Peace is the only thing that can be sustained.
I actually think that the war can be won.
Okay.
But I said not militarily alone. What we have spent more time doing is fighting it militarily. You can't win it militarily because this is something driven by ideas. And if you're going to win that war, you must also fight it at the level of ideas. But it's winnable in the long run, both here and elsewhere. But between now and then, it is going to get worse before it gets better.
Sure. And I think, like the Christians will say, end time signs. End time
anyway,
signs.
you are watching the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. We'll go on a short break again, and then we'll return and we'll continue with the discussions in another segment of the program. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
So we're done now.
Hey, we'll jump in.